So please welcome with me Andrew Thornton.
So I've got my props, I have my book, a hat, and a stapler. So by the end of the afternoon, or the end of the session, hopefully, why I have all those will make sense. Now this is historically known a bit as the graveyard session, because everybody's just had lunch. Half an hour after lunch, your digestion is starting to set in, and you have a tendency to nod off. So I'm going to invite you all to stand up, and to stretch, and to move, and to, if you need to make a bit of a sort of as you do it. And if any of those bits of you are stiff, to move them around. Touch your toes if you can do that. Or not, as the case may be. And then I invite you just to stand still for a moment. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And I want you just to join with me in taking 6 really deep breaths. And when I say really deep, breathe right into the base of your belly and then let it out. So let's go this together. So 1. And 2. And 3. And 4. Last 2, really deep now. And last one. You can sit down. So we do something like this anytime we start a meeting. And hopefully, maybe you feel a little bit more present, a little bit more relaxed. The idea is to help you be really present in the moment. Okay, so before I get into the topic of the Great Resignation, quick bit about me. I'm from Dublin. In fact, it's funny, 2 of the 3 speakers in this session are Irish, so it's a bit of an Irish session. Spent some time in Amsterdam as a kid, got a job with Mars in the UK. That had me in the UK for 30-odd years. Set up a consultancy there called SRCG with Scott Annan, who's sitting in the front row. That's when I first spoke at NACS. And in my early 40s, I had a midlife crisis. Over a period of time, I started thinking, is this it? Is this all my life is about? What's the purpose? What's the point of it all? I've subsequently discovered what the Japanese call ikigai. And they say that the key to a successful, happy life is if you can live in the center of these concentric circles. So you're doing something that you love doing, something you're good at, something that you can be paid for, and something the world needs. And in my consultancy days, I was good at it. I loved it for a lot of the time. I was paid very well, more than I've ever been paid since. But for me, did the world really need what we did? So that's prompted this crisis for me, and I went and bought a couple of grocery stores, as you do when you have a midlife crisis, and founded Thornton's Budgeons. Now, I know some of you have been to the stores, one or both stores that I owned in London, and I realized afterwards that buying those was about trying to create a different way of doing business, which is around heart. And for the second 7 years of the 15 years I owned Thornton's Budgeons, we became a laboratory to try different ideas. At the beginning, we really didn't know what we were doing. We were just trying things out. What about this? What about this? So I like to say that what we did was we did a practice, which we then put some theory behind, rather than trying to put a theory into practice. But as you all know, running convenience stores is pretty all-encompassing. It takes all your energy. So a couple of years ago, it was clear to me that actually if I was going to really sort of write this book and actually start to influence other businesses to open their hearts, that I would need to sell the business. So I did that a year ago and published the book literally about a month ago. So I now find myself living in the southern part of Germany, mostly between there and London. I'm learning German. And my favorite 2 things I've learned on my Duolingo in German, and I have to get this right, is der Bär and seine Frau mochte Yoga, and der Bär brauchen keinen Schrank. Okay, so the Germans in the room will know. There's some obsession with bears in German Duolingo, which I don't really know about. My partner's learning Spanish and Italian on Duolingo, and they have no bears in Spanish and Italian, so I don't really know. And no one in Germany has been able to explain to me what this obsession with bears is. I want to introduce to you two concepts today. The first is the nodding head syndrome. So there's a pretty good chance, as I prepared for this, that everybody in the room was going to, as I talk, say, yeah, totally agree, yeah. And then there's a good chance that most people would then leave the room, go on to something else, and would forget everything I said and not do anything about it. So one of my challenges today, and hence the hat and the stapler, is we're going to have a bit of fun at the end because I'm going to try and help ensure that not all of you forget about everything I said today and do something different next month. The second concept is that this heart stuff, people say, oh, it's soft, fluffy stuff, it's hugging trees. Our ex-colleague used to call it about wet lettuce stuff. And it's not about numbers. Well, that is completely and utterly untrue. And I'm going to show you today the impact of this work has on hard numbers. Okay, so the Great Resignation. Some statistics up there. COVID has been touched about already, has made people reevaluate their lives. I don't want to live this way anymore. I don't want to commute all the time. I don't want to work for that ass of a boss who treats me really badly. I don't want to spend all my life earning stacks of money for the fat guy upstairs and not getting any of it myself. People have had enough. It really helped people focus that there's a different way of doing things. I'm 58, so a lot of people I know my age are retiring. In fact, my accountant told me a friend of his who was a senior officer in the Metropolitan Police quit, and now he's stocking shelves in Waitrose part-time. He doesn't need the money. He hated his job, but he wanted some structure in his life. So there's lots of talent at different levels. Brett talked about Gen Z and their requirements. Gen Z people won't work for organizations that don't have a purpose. So all the different generations are opting out of the labor force. So I totally agree with everything Zeynep said about paying people properly. And it's also not all about money. And typically when someone comes to me and says, oh, Henry is resigned because he's earning $5,000 somewhere else, more somewhere else, it generally isn't really about money. And there's always someone who's going to pay a few $1,000s more for someone. There's more to it than this. And the second thing is we all have to address this whole working from home, hybrid, and so on. And people like the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the head of Morgan Stanley, all said, you got to come back to the office, you don't work. People are saying, no, I don't want to go back to the office. And there isn't a cookie-cutter answer to this. It's very company-specific. And there's also a challenge, and to relate to Scott's point earlier, or question about the sector we operate in, relatively low paid. You can't work from home if you're a cashier, or you're stocking shelves, or you're driving a truck. So how do you then stop this two-tier society, where there is the haves who can work from home and can be flexible, and then those who can't? So a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today addresses those sort of issues. So, hardly surprising, the answer to all this, I believe, is first of all about listening and engaging with people and putting the heart back into business. So the laboratory of Thornton's Budgeons, we developed a number of ideas and concepts through trial and error. And we came up with this concept of authentic leadership. And in fact, this whole thing about heart is all about as simple and as complicated as getting people to show up truly themselves, authentically themselves. There are 10 components. I'm not going to talk about each of those components today, just the ones highlighted in yellow, but you can have a little bit of a look for a second. So let's start with purpose. Oh, okay. That's interesting. The slides are in a slightly different order now. Okay. Well, I made a change to them, but it's disappeared. Okay. So I'm going to go on to purpose, and I'm going to have to go back. So our purpose at Thornton's Budgeons was that we're the community supermarket that really cares about people and planet. And we developed that purpose relatively early on in the journey to help guide us through what we were doing in life. And we later we turned into a manifesto, which had heart sets, which are like values, and habits and deliverables. Because ultimately, we felt people needed a framework to operate from. So this purpose helped guide everything we did. It gave us competitive advantage. It was compelling for our employees. It was compelling for our customers. It was compelling for our community. And I believe every organization needs to have a purpose. Because if you don't have a stated purpose, you'll have an unconscious one, which is often just about making as much money as possible. I was talking to a supplier last night who said their purpose was about satisfying the retailer's needs. And I challenged that supplier by saying, well, there's something deeper, I'm sure, in your organization than just because lots of people are meeting retailers' needs, just like lots of retailers are trying to meet customers' needs. So that was our purpose, and that set us off on the journey. So I'm going to have to go back to the slides. What we ended up doing, without realizing it, and I'd never even heard the word psychological safety when we started this, but is creating psychological safety, which is defined up there as being able to show yourself without fear of negative consequences of self-image, status, or career. So it means you can share openly and it won't be taken against you. So I won't say to my boss, Scott, over here, something, and he'll take it out, he'll play it back to me in a week's time against me. Google did a study in 2015 where they looked at the differences between their most and their least successful teams worldwide. And they identified the single biggest differentiator between the successful and the least successful ones was psychological safety. So everything I talk about in this presentation helps you create psychological safety. It's tough, it takes time, it's built with trust, and it's very easily destroyed. So a lot of the challenges that us humans have is our growing up experience. So if you look at kids, 7 or 8, they're all running around, they're full of the joys of spring, there's no worries, and then parents start saying things like, oh, don't be angry, or big boys don't cry, and then teachers start saying things, and then bosses start saying things, and we shut down. As humans, we shut down, we shut down, we shut down, we shut down. And we take less and less of ourselves to work. So part of this psychological safety is allowing it to be safe to bring up some of those things that you put away. There's a guy who said it was like carrying a black sack over your shoulder. Put away because it wasn't safe to be like that. So one of the things we did in the early days of Thornton's budget, we realized very quickly that we had to have a coaching culture. We had to move from the command and control, typical retail, boss says what to do, employee does it. And to spread our coaching, we trained people in the store to coach their colleagues. Because it's all right having outside people from Heart and Business coming in to the store, but you really want to internalize this yourself. We did an exercise with people in the early coaching sessions called an inflow exercise. And it takes 2 of the Ikigai dimensions. Imagine a 2x2 matrix where you have what you love doing and what you hate doing, what you're good at doing and what you're not very good at doing. And we asked people to plot it. Now, Seelan, who ran our produce department, the king of tomatoes here, he put down there that he loved constructing and building things. And his coach asked him, well, why don't you do it in the store? And he told a story about early in his career when he built a display in the store and the boss came past in about 3 seconds and said, that looks shit, what are you doing that for? And Seelan suddenly thought, oh my God, I can't bring my creativity to work. So he shut down. So encouraged by his coach, he started small and he started to build these small tomato displays. He got great positive feedback from me and other people and customers, so the displays just got larger and larger and larger. And any of you who ever visited Thornton's Budgeons in the British tomato season would see this enormous display, 3 meters wide, 2 meters high, full of tomatoes. People would say, oh, you must have loads of waste. We had no waste because we just sold shitloads of tomatoes. And loads of fresh fruit and veg. And what better way, as the Migros guy was saying, in terms of fresh food, if you want to start with fresh food, to have an abundant display like that. Seelan also, he seemed to grow 3 centimeters. He looked taller, he was more confident. He engaged with customers the way he didn't before. And you know what? His colleagues started to copy him. So we started having great fish displays and great cheese displays. And suddenly the whole store comes alive and confident, and there's an energy about the place. So that's psychological safety in action. Right, we've been through that one. The next thing I think you really need to do, and part of the mistake many companies do, is they have values and they have missions, but they don't have habits. Habits are things you do which help you deliver your values, or your heart sets, as we call them. So here, just a sample of some of the ones we did. So active listening. So as humans, one of our greatest primal needs is to be heard. Yet today, we don't really listen to each other. In business, we don't listen to each other. People interrupt each other all the time. There's never a moment. So active listening means I sit down with you, and I sit down and I listen to you. I put my phone away, I look you in the eye, I hear what you say. I don't interrupt you, I don't say, oh, my view is, and oh, this happened to me once. And maybe at the end I might repeat back to you what I heard you say. So when we first did this picture was in one of the early workshops we ran. Jim, the older guy there, was our store manager. And Marvin said at the end of the workshop, the highlight of the day was that Jim listened to him for 2 minutes. So he'd worked for Jim for 5 or 6 years, and Jim had never listened to him for 2 minutes. Because it was always on the go, this, and this, and this, and this. It's extraordinary. And try it at home. Try go home to your husband and wife and really listen to them. It's extraordinary impact. It really has. Giving and receiving coaching. We talked about that. We create this coaching culture. Henry challenged me at breakfast this morning. How do you scale something like this from a one-store supermarket? You do that by internalizing it, by getting internal coaches, by getting people to champion it. So you're not having external people to have to train a whole organization. Patagonia, global organization, is one of the most purposeful companies I know, and they manage this on a global scale. So it is absolutely possible. The next thing relates back to what Rebecca said earlier about appreciation. It is one of the simplest things that you can do to help people feel better about themselves is appreciation. The classic store walk, store manager go around with clipboard, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Or your appraisal. You spend 10 minutes about the stuff that's good and then 50 minutes on your development needs. So at Thornton's Budgeons, we would go around store walks looking for things going right. And we would specifically go to look to praise things. I would wander around, and if I saw something that was wrong, I'd store it away and I'd deal with it separately. And we use a thing called descriptive praise, which is you describe to someone what's good about it. So it's not just saying, oh, that looks great. But Celan, I love the way you built that tomato display, and you use kit we had in the warehouse. You didn't have to buy any, and everything looks really fresh. Because just saying it looks great is a bit crass. Oh yeah, it doesn't really mean anything. Being on the pitch and not in the stands is a mindset. Football game, there's 30 people on the pitch playing. Lots of people in the stands and at home on TV, saying, oh, that's useless, oh, the fool, so and so. You're not on the bloody pitch. You're just sitting in the bleachers moaning and complaining. We had an attitude, you want to be on the pitch. So the deli could be struggling with sales, and the deli manager could say, well, Morrison's up the road, have opened a deli, and Mary and Joan aren't very good, sure, what can you do? Or he could say, yeah, I know sales are tough, we're not doing well, I'm not sure what the problem is, but I really want to get all your input. Do you feel the difference in that sort of attitude? And then linked to that is the whole question of asking for support, which links to that. The key to all this has to be modeled by the leadership team. This is where things go wrong, when you have values that are written on the wall, but the leaders don't follow it. In the book, we interviewed Dave Lewis, the former Tesco CEO, who said you can't talk yourself out of something you've behaved yourself into. It's a really powerful statement. When he went into Tesco, all the talk was about the customer, all the action was it's all about profit. And that led them to be into deep water. And all this delivers authenticity in people, and it delivers community, which is again being talked about earlier. Connection. We started running in-person workshops again since COVID, just recently. And the effect is extraordinary. Eudora ran one last week, and when it was finished, no one left. They didn't want to go. They still hung around for half an hour afterwards, rather than scuttling away straight away. So, I want to just talk literally for a minute or two about the plastic-free project we did, because it's, I think, our proudest achievement as a one-store supermarket. I've talked about it here before, so I'm not going to go into massive detail. But effectively, we set the challenge in 2018 to be the first in the UK, second in the world, to introduce plastic-free zones. And in 10 weeks, we launched 1,800 plastic-free lines across 26 different areas of the store. You can see how beautiful it is. A produce department with no plastic in it just looks so much more attractive than one with plastic. And here's some of the other things we did. I said I'm not going to dwell on it because a lot of you know about this already. What I'd want to dwell on, though, is the results. Okay, so with our focused team behind a purpose and their hearts open, We generated a project that delivered total store sales uplift of 4% ahead of the marketplace. Now, you guys know in food retailing how difficult it is to get a 4% uplift in sales. We changed, one of the things we set out to do was to show the industry this wasn't as difficult as they thought it was. And we were told by numerous CEOs afterwards that we had changed the relationship between supermarkets and plastic worldwide, which is quite an achievement on a one-store operation. Again, it shows when you have purpose and heart what you can do. The team were engaged. On the day we launched this, 3 people came to me and said, "This is the proudest day of my working life." That's quite something to have people. People are proud. They love being part of the community, the family of Thornton's Budgeons. And talking of average length of service, when I sold the store, we had an average length of service of 8.5 years, which is quite unheard of in a central London supermarket. And we won stacks of awards as well. Now, in the book we interviewed, Eudora interviewed a number of the team, and I want to show you some of the things they said for the book. So can I ask you to roll the film?
I was about to go to university and study business studies in my own country, Sri Lanka. But our family needed to leave immediately due to the political situation. So instead of becoming a student, I became a refugee.
Positive people can change the world. The 2-year coaching program changed me completely. Previously, I would jump to anger when I discovered that a member of staff had forgotten to do something or not done their job properly. After the coaching program, I'd take a deep breath and approach the situation in a calm and patient manner.
I feel happy and fulfilled. The combination of improving my health and doing coaching and leadership training has meant I'm a better place now than 6 years ago. I'm healthier, fitter, calmer, more relaxed, and no longer angry.
Working for Thornton Budgeons has deeply impacted my life. We raised money for Sri Lanka. I was interviewed by Jon Snow on Channel 4, and I went to several black tie events. Thornton Budgeons is not 9-to-5 job. It is a place where you are offered many opportunities to grow.
Now when I'm faced with a co-worker who has a different opinion to me, we're able to voice our differences and explore solutions together instead of arguing. The biggest challenge for me has been showing my vulnerability. My old behavior pattern was to ignore my surroundings and just react.
This created a new type of responsive relationship with my team as well as my family. I have always been close to my wife, and now she really appreciates my calm and patient manner.
When I first met Andrew, I saw him as just a boss. I felt I needed to be polite, and I hoped he'd keep me on as a bookkeeper. But I didn't have the courage to speak up. I felt I needed to look up to white people, and they were more powerful than us. I also felt they didn't take us seriously. I grew up in a culture where you respect the elders, always accepting and never questioning.
I feel more balanced and I'm in harmony with myself. I can clearly see the achievements of the past 2 years. I've gone through some very big personal and professional changes. COVID has been a challenge, but it has made us stronger together.
But the thing is, I found I had the courage to call him up on his actions, and I was able to hold him to account, and he was able to apologize. My relationship with the white man changed.
Every new decision and value the frequent appreciation I receive, not only from Andrew, but also from other leaders. I believe appreciation is more valuable than money.
I found that stepping into your authentic leadership training was really useful. I started to look at things differently. I wanted to know why someone might be doing something and reacting in a certain way. People come to me with the issues now, and I try to be balanced, fair, and do the right thing.
So these are real people. You can imagine people in your organization on the shop floor. 5 years ago, if I said, you're going to stand up at a book launch in London or in front of 100 people and read this out, they would have thought I was joking. But they absolutely loved it. They're not the best performers in the world, but this is real people. And their stories as well are personal, the impact on their relationships, how they are in their community. This whole thing of racial, and I really didn't understand how we managed to tap into all these hugely diverse racial groupings. And so many business leaders are white, middle-class, privileged men like me, and so many people who work in the sector are the opposite of that. And this approach does allow you to tap into all of those. And what Jahid said to him, appreciation is more important than money. Now, Jahid doesn't earn anything, as much as probably anybody in this room, and he has a young family, but that's what was important to him. Very quickly, I want to just give you one example outside Thornton Budgeons, because we flipped out of the laboratory about 4 years ago and started working with other clients. Cotswold Fair is a specialty food seller in the UK, and we worked with them and their CEO, Paul, to look at how they wanted to develop. Their business was stalling, and they were stalling partly because they had lost touch with their original purpose. And that's often the reason businesses start to stall. So these are some of the things he said that the work we did with them did, was it helped consolidate and get back to their purpose. We got them away from the office, so a lot of stuff we do is getting people into workshops, so people could show themselves, they could be vulnerable. And he talked about seeing his tears made it safe for other people. And tears are really powerful in a working environment. I know a lot of people say, ooh, that feels uncomfortable about doing that. But it is really powerful. They set up some habits, again, like Thornton's Budgeons, and it helped people to discover other ways than just using their brain, using intuition to make decisions. The sales performance stick for themselves. Their company over 3 years doubled in size, and their profitability increased by a factor of 5. So if anybody in this room thinks that it doesn't work, you're wrong. So the Great Resignation, I discovered in my research, it doesn't affect purpose-driven companies. Anybody I spoke to who runs a purpose-driven company, clients or otherwise, have said they're not impacted by it. They say things like, there's a real change post-COVID, what people are looking for. We found it easier to recruit than normal. Money is not their prime motivator, is what they're saying. Being a B Corp, like Thornton Businesses, comes up frequently. The younger generation want to put their skills to something good. And he's never seen such a motivated, fired-up team. Okay, so this is the time for you to do your homework. So I'd like you to take a minute or two, and I know I only have got 2.36 minutes left, to write down 2 things from today's talk you are going to do differently in the month of June. So you get a pen and paper. I notice some pens are moving, some aren't. So this is a challenge that I'm going to give you an opportunity to follow up on. So you could, for example, say you're going to make a point of appreciating 3 people or 5 people every day during the month of June. Or you could decide you're going to actively listen once a day to one of your colleagues, or at home. You could decide you're going to look at the Ikigai chart and see where you play out on that. So, because of time constraints, you might have to finish your list of a couple of things later on. What we found is if you tell someone you're going to do something, you have a much greater chance of doing it. If I said to Henry, I'm going to do a bungee jump in June, he's going to ring me up and say, well, did you do it, Andrew? So I'm much more likely to do it. So we call that having an accountability buddy. So I'm going to give each of you the opportunity to use me as an accountability buddy. So the hat and the stapler. So if you'd like to have a chat with me in July for 20 minutes on the phone or on Zoom to see how you got on with your tasks, what I want you to do is get your business card, or if you don't have a business card, write your name and email address on a bit of paper, and get a €20 note and staple the 2 together. And if we then speak in July and you demonstrate to me you have done that, I will send you your €20 back, and I'll also send you a copy of the book, which is worth €20. So it's a double or quits bet. So the hat will be around on my table. I'm here till tomorrow evening as well, so just put your business card in there, and great. Okay, first 20 euro coming. So, I believe, as hopefully you'll see, that the heart approach helps with the Great Resignation, but helps dealing with the climate crisis, tapping into broader intelligence, and will increase your bottom line. So I'd love to hear from you about how you get on with your challenges, either by giving me your card or otherwise. And I realize, Mark, I apologize, I have run over. Oh, no, I haven't actually. God, I thought I'd gone over. I've still got 20 seconds left. Final thing, on our website, or if you send me a LinkedIn message, there's the first 3 chapters of the book you can download and read for free. So there's another prize for you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Andrew. And
I
now your time is up.
I told you I've never run over time.
That was really on time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrew. That was really interesting, listening, understanding. I think what you were just sharing with us, what you did with your team back at Thornton Spudgeons, is exactly what we heard the whole day, right? When it comes to labor, to employee understanding, you need to know who your employees are, what they are doing, what they are struggling with, what is going on in their life, right? Because if you don't know what is bothering them or what is holding them back, then you can't help them, you can't encourage them. And I guess your best example really is your colleague that built the tomato stands. You don't know that he's good at that, right? So you need to first engage with your employees to really make that happen. And as you said, pay is important, but it is not everything, right?
No.
So really interesting. We might have time for one question, if there is one question from the audience. I know you have been really quiet since lunch, so that means you ate a lot, which means the food was good. So that's good. So it's a good sign if you don't have questions, because then the food was good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Big applause for Andrew. Thank you. Thanks.